Hey everybody. Hey party people. Class is in session with me, Dr. Vanny PooPants. Today I want to talk about DEI Aesthetics and recalibrate the critique within Eat the Rich media. What I will work towards uncovering is that actually we're sold a raw deal in the storefront while real stakes are hidden in the stockroom. We're going to look at a few case studies ranging from season 3 of White Lotus to Beatriz at dinner and then finally Triangle of Sadness. You might be wondering, why should we take a peek behind media that seemingly share our political values? Well, to be completely honest, they really don't. Recently, there has been a lot of Eat the Rich media that claims to be a critique on class struggle, yet they completely miss the mark. The political slogan, Eat the Rich, coined by philosopher and political theorist Jean-Jacques Rousseau, when the people shall have nothing more to eat, they will eat the rich. This points to the demand for wealth distribution and is commonly used to signal anti-capitalist ideologies. Rousseau's literary work inspired the leaders of the French Revolution. However, the eat the rich politics in these movies is not about eating the rich so that we can disappear them, thus creating equity. I argue that the media in this category actually want to consume the rich, digest them, and ultimately become them. So in a way, capitalism is not traded in for liberation, but instead, it becomes a table setting for this feast. Let's not forget that shortly after the French Revolution, a dictator came into power. DEI Aesthetics is the use of signposting diversity, equity, and inclusion to claim empathy for the working class. Trademark Mantran Nguyen. I wanted to offer a new framework to better understand the intention behind stories that attempt to skewer the uber wealthy, only to capitulate to its capitalist aspirations. Let's start with our first case study. In the most current, third season of White Lotus, Rick, played by Walton Goggins, seeks revenge against the owner of the hotel in Thailand for the alleged murder of his father. During this trip, Rick meets up with an old friend named Frank, played by Sam Rockwell. More happens in this season, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to highlight details about the show's creator, Mike White, and the particular relationship between these old pals. Every single episode is written and directed by Mike White. This singular vision becomes quite narrow. The characters penned by White in these large ensemble casts all receive seemingly the same amount of empathy, but not airtime. White attempts the impossible task of placing everyone on an even playing field. In that way, White Lotus employees share emotional stakes that are quite similar to that of the patrons of the White Lotus. What occurs is an asymmetry between the two caste systems, which calcifies the us versus them dichotomy, forcing the audience to root for their own team. Therein lies the problem. Should you choose the undeveloped yet altruistic employees of the White Lotus, or the bombastic, quirky, charming, uber-wealthy characters? Of course, the rich, complex assholes eclipse the compassionate employees. In the spring of 2025, Banana Republic debuted a resort collection in collaboration with HBO's The White Lotus. Banana Republic is essentially a fast fashion franchise. Its higher price point than that of other mall clothes makes it seemingly aspirational. You may also know that another term for a small, impoverished, politically unstable country, corrupt from an excessive reliance on one crop and foreign funding, is known as, you guessed it, a Banana Republic. Mina Anvari, head of marketing of Banana Republic, speaks to The Hollywood Reporter about its newest collection. Our heritage, rooted in travel, meets the world of White Lotus with a thoughtfully crafted collection that is both aspirational and attainable. This collection celebrates a sense of discovery and wit through a premium lens, featuring tropical and vintage-inspired prints from our archives and landscapes of Thailand. It embodies the spirit of adventure. Now, it's almost too ironic to decipher. Anvari uses speaking points consistent with travel guides for Manifest Destiny. To seek the spirit of adventure, you can don the company's pattern archives and the landscapes of Thailand. And to the Banana Republic, the landscapes of Thailand serve as an outlet that embodies only the spirit of adventure, not the fleshy messiness of an entire nation. So now, well, don't, Van. Just don't, please. I don't want to dwell on it. No. Please, Van. Not gonna talk about anything. But
I picked Thailand because I always had a thing for Asian girls. Maybe what I really want is to be one of these Asian girls. Are we our forms? Am I a middle-aged white guy on the inside too? Or inside, could I be an Asian girl?
Right. I don't know. That is Sam Rockwell and Walter Goggins in The White Lotus.
Mike. Why? This fetish has nothing at all to do with sexual liberation. Plus, he's assured us that he's seeking spiritual healing in Buddhism. What school of Buddhism? Couldn't tell ya. It's a monologue that fails to understand the large problem of sexual tourism in Southeast Asian countries. This monologue furthers the kind of sex work that is performed as if this genderqueer experience doesn't happen on American turf. They went all the way to Thailand to have a white guy say to another white guy, "Well, I try to find myself within sexual tourism, and it didn't work." Pause for laughter. I can be generous and say that White sets up these characters to get egg on their face, fail, or even bumble through these complicated examinations, but it's dangerous to assume that the ruling class is unaware and uninformed. What really happens is that the working class pays for these assumptions psychically, if not physically. The rest of the Asian characters perform some type of altruism, albeit in a security guard or a hospitality employee. White uses Lisa from Blackpink, a K-pop icon, for her clout but does nothing to develop her character. As Asian American scholar Karen Shimakawa writes, Asian American performers never walk onto an empty stage. That space is always already densely populated with phantasms of Orientalness through and against which an Asian American performer must struggle to be seen, unquote. The ghosts of Orientalism are embedded throughout the show, in the dialogue, and the scenery. Ultimately, Mike White happily freefalls into a lot of these racial tropes while helming the show. But what does it look like when somebody else directs White's writings? Leading us to case study number 2, Beatriz at Dinner, a 2017 film written by Mike White and directed by Miguel Arteta. The titular Beatriz, played by Salma Hayek, is a working-class massage therapist and holistic healer from Mexico who is invited by her wealthy client, Kathy, to a seemingly innocent dinner at their mansion. As the guests arrive, Beatriz finds herself in escalating arguments with Doug Strutt, a ruthless real estate mogul played by John Lithgow. After the dinner, Beatriz fantasizes about killing Doug, but eventually leaves the party and walks into the sea. I want to preface with, I really like the movie. I actually think it's teeming with possibility, and it's much closer to that of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner than it is of White Lotus. What it gets right is the messiness of our main character. Beatriz is complicated, and you never leave her perspective. This is likely due to the direction of Miguel Arteta and his collaboration with Salma Hayek. Positionality here is key. In this particular example, Arteta is Puerto Rican and Salma Hayek is Mexican. But for the interest of this story, their diasporic identities are a meeting point to really flesh out the character of Beatriz and her development. Now, I'm not saying that positionality is the answer or even antithesis to DEI aesthetic stories. Daniel Day Kim recently reflected on the limitations of identity politics and storytelling.
Right now, there's a focus on nationality-specific casting when it comes to Asian Americans that I feel is an overcorrection. I think there are times when nationality-specific casting is important. For instance, when there's an authentic language requirement in the role, or it's based on a real person. Very often, if the role calls for a Korean American, they will not see a Japanese American or a Chinese American or any other Asian nationality. But there are very often times when the role itself has not been thought through, that it doesn't require any kind of specificity in the story as it's being told, or in the specifics of the character, because very often it's not even written by an Asian person. So they don't know the difference in what they're asking for, and yet casting is being very specific.
Arteta is mostly a gun-for-hire director, and Salma Hayek is married to a billionaire. These players are complicated, compromised, and yet this movie skewers billionaires better than White Lotus does. Throughout the film, she sees a growing mass in the ocean that seems to call to her and submerges herself to get closer to the mystery. This mass is a pervasive symbol of the growing cancer of dehumanization that she feels compelled to heal. At times, she descends into zany chaos. Cultural theorist and scholar Sian Ngai writes, "For all its spectacular displays of laborious exertion, the activity of zaniness is more often than not destructive. One might even describe it as the dramatization of an anarchic refusal to be productive." Meaning that even in this script, with its many nuances within critique, the subject still must surrender their entire body to the ocean in order to continue to bear the wounds of imperialism. While we're in the ocean seeking refuge, let's go to our third case study. Triangle of Sadness is a 2022 film written and directed by Ruben Östlund. In this film, we meet Yaya and Carl, models who attend a luxury cruise captained by a drunken Marxist. Eventually, they're caught in a storm, everyone vomits, and a band of pirates explode the ship. Afterwards, a small group of survivors wash ashore on a deserted island. Class dynamics quickly shift as Abigail, a lowly toilet cleaner on the ship, played perfectly by Dolly De Leon, takes charge in the hunting and cooking for the remaining survivors. She becomes the captain of the island. But after Abigail finds out there's a nearby luxury hotel, her worry of losing power causes her to contemplate killing the model couple so she can keep wielding power in this tiny society. The perspectives of the rich tourists and the working class crew, much like the tides of the film, flip the hierarchy ass over tea kettle. Now, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is stacked like a triangle. The least important need for human survival is esteem, desire, and self-actualization. This is often only afforded to the upper class, whereas the base of the triangle is made of food, water, and shelter. Once stranded on the island, that triangle turns upside down, leaving the wealthy tourists and high-ranking staff incapable of meeting their basic needs. That's when we're introduced to Abigail. There's a lot to examine with Dolly De Leon's character. She's a nameless, faceless Filipina worker up until the third and final act of the film. After the power shift on the island happens, she begins to replicate some kind of vicious colonial tendencies, forcing everyone to bow to her for being the main provider, and even makes Harris Dickinson's character, Carl, her boy toy. This complicates a character who would otherwise be shoved to the side by the upper class. Where Beatriz fantasizes about murder and power, Abigail plays it out. Although one could see that this is an extension of Abigail continuing to perform survival like she always has in life, why does she take such a violent turn? Who is penning this decision? Rich white guy. The roles are reversed, and yet the results remain the same. Abigail seems to replicate the master's anxiety, assuming that power can only be violently enacted through this singular vision. I'm concerned about many DEI aesthetic stories and their narrow ideologies. This belief that once enslaved or oppressed people become free, they will begin to oppress those who were previously in power. And that's just not historically true. It erases the ethical solidarity and care that takes place in these marginalized communities. We need more messiness, and moreover, how does mess disrupt the importance or value of what is mainstream? If this form of storytelling, motion pictures, are considered to be empathy machines, then how much has this medium, and by extension empathy, failed Black and brown people for the past 100 years of filmmaking? Mike, why? Why you do this to me?